since the start of 2025, I've been screaming from the rooftops like a priest in a playground that Indycar is good and better than F1, with better tracks and better action and better driving standards. Well, maybe not the last one, but you get the point. Only while the series this year has thrown up the occasional banger of a race, the overall season has felt slightly more subdued compared to the last few previous, and coming into Road America, I wasn't expecting things to get much better. Don't get me wrong, this is a fantastic circuit, one of the longest on the schedule, and thus full of far more little nuances for drivers to master. But while we regularly get decent action around this gig, it's not an oval, which apparently is the only thing that's allowed to be exciting in 2025. Road America would take this preconception, strip it of any lube, and proceed to ram it so far up my arse I resembled a human kebab. What we were left with was probably one of the best IndyCar races in recent memory, packed with drama, pain, beers, more pain, and not this, it was on my Twitter feed as well for some reason. You know what, just roll the intro. Quite a lot of news to get into this week, but we start with an apology. Not from me, McLaren and the Seagull each released statements this week, distancing themselves from an incident no one would have realised had even happened before all this went down. Instead, fans were gripped by all this talk of a radio outburst, words that didn't reflect who the Seagull is. McLaren maintained the highest levels of professionalism. What could have been so foul to trigger such a reaction? Well, will I go and find my big book of slurs? Here, go and watch this disgraceful footage for yourself.
Fucking bullshit. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You fucking take me out last race and he gets to fucking continue? No. Fuck that shit. Tell Penske to go fuck himself.
So, where's the problem here? If you started playing my new board game, Super Slur Showdown, or call for Roger Penske's life support to be unplugged, maybe fair enough. Long story short, if you're offended by what you saw in that clip, it might be a good idea to switch off this video and watch some Peppa Pig or something.
Do you like cucumber?
Yuck.
George is a difficult little cunt.
Do you like anything, you ungrateful little shit?
Whoops, sorry, wrong clip. Another talking point from the last round in St. Louis was the welfare of this cameraman, who contributed to Devlin DiFrancesco's second crash of the day at the Bommarito 500. Thankfully, Bama here is all good, and Devlin was spotted giving the Fox crew member a bit of advice in the paddock this week: just get drunk on the job. See, look how much happier he is. Elsewhere, Louis Foster was allowed to visit schools again, and we've got some new liveries hitting the track this weekend. AJ Foyt paid tribute to longtime supporter Marlene Sexton, Alex Palou arrived dressed as a used tampon, and Goat Ray got some new colours too. Can't wait to get a closer look at that when he smashes it on Sunday. No, wait, that's not what I meant. But this is a long circuit, as I said, so let's begin by following Nolan's Seagull for a lap around Road America. And just to be safe, we've decided to tweak the footage a little bit for the more sensitive of you out there. Indycar's brakes would be tested around here, Louis Foster's quickly turning to cigarettes, while DiFrancesco's just went on strike, sending the RLL driver into the gravel. It was a bit of a rough start to the session for Devlin, whose act of kindness earlier was clearly met with all from the racing gods, though after getting the crash course on how not to drive this circuit, he did put in a late flyer to end the session in P2. We get some early taste of the racing between ex-Andretti teammates Colton Herta and Alex Rossi. The ECR man almost forced off at turn 1 before the driver of the number 20 boldly stated that he was more than capable of binning it there on his own. Also in the spot of bother was the 14 of Santino Ferrucci, who was keen to test whether his car was more aerodynamic sideways, bringing out the yellows at the same time as Graham Rahal forgot about his steering wheel. The American later found to have drowned himself in a bucket of ice. The Seagull found himself in a similar predicament, and I've just heard reports he's now had to apologise to the sound in the turn 5 runoff. Political correctness has gone f***ing mad. Also, you can't say that either, can you? Carl Kirkwood would end the opening session on top then, as Friday came to a close, and we rolled into a warm but breezy Saturday. That didn't make conditions in the cars particularly fun to contend with, Scott McLaughlin trying his hardest to bin it early on to get the rest of the session off, in what was later revealed to be the 3-car testing out Joseph Newgarden's racing lines for Sunday. Will Power's been looking over his shoulder a lot this season, though felt the need to do so literally here, and as he was flying in the closing minutes, the ferret was back to his old terrorist ways. IndyCar, for some reason, decided to tell its drivers they weren't going to officiate the practice sessions, Ferrucci taking full advantage as he spent P2 bullying Herta in the 26 car. McLaren's Christian Lundgaard would be fastest going into qualifying then, with multiple teams in the mix. That being said though, I'm not quite sure we expected what happened next. Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan were the shocks of round 1 on Saturday afternoon. Graham Rahal and Louis Foster both securing spots in the Fast 12 as Dixon handed Di Francesco his excuse for the week in a move that saw the Ganassi driver penalised and Joseph Newgarden elevated back up into the drop zone. Oh, this Penske bias, it strikes again. More big names would fall in Group 2. Herter and Ericsson bumped in the final seconds as we wrap up this bit by shouting out Jacob Abel, who was 3/10 off the pace. Off 13th. Below would do below things by setting the early pace in round 2, more than safe as the session came to a close, and we waited on the final 3 lap times from Foster, Rahal and David Malukas. RLL shook up the boat once again here, both machines making it into the Fast 6, as Malukas narrowly missed out, and I had the word pain written in the script here, but that was before I watched lap 1. We've got the pole shootout before that though, when it was Rahal somehow holding the early pace. Below then displaced him in the used tampon before it was Foster's turn to shock the world and go to provisional pole position on a used set of soft tyres. There was still time for the championship leader to take that back, though after discovering that Indycars are in fact slower when taken onto the grass, the dust settled, and just like it was in 2024, we had a new rookie pole sitter on our hands. Fingers crossed history doesn't go the same way on that one though. As we geared up for the command then, the big question on everyone's lips was how long would Foster and the Chernobyl car hold off below on the start, and with the average guess being about the length of Kanye's genitalia, we geared up for the green, and watched as the used tampon was swallowed up by the field. Alright, props to Palou for making this race interesting at least. The field would cleanly make it through turn 1, Foster holding off the 3-car of McLaughlin, as someone in the midfield thought it would be funny to create a smokescreen, and Lundgaard got to find out how it allegedly feels to be one of his cats as Malukas toe punted his arsehole and was sent spinning into the dirt. With the yellows out then and the 4-car restarted, we got going again on lap 3, which went more like how we expected. The RLL machine of Foster out-dragged almost immediately, and Scott McLaughlin taking over his spot at the front. Further back, Palou decided it was finally time to be competent as he swooped past the Penske of Power, who seemed to take that personally as he caught the Ganassi off guard at turn 5 to get back ahead. This wasn't over yet though, as Palou looked to try again coming into Canada corner, Power opting for the offense is the best defense approach as he turned a missed braking zone into a pass on Kirkwood, which in turn allowed Palou to sail by both of them. Championship fight, you were good while you lasted, I guess. The same statement can be seemingly attributed to the pace of Prema and Israeli driver Robert Schwartzman, who I'd say entered the final sector like a ballistic missile, though that might be deemed as insensitive nowadays. Oh, whoops, guess I've said it now. We'll try this again then on lap 7 as McLaughlin held the lead and the world watched in suspense as Graham Rahal attempted an overtake. There were then struggles meanwhile for Pato O'Ward, the Mexican complaining of low power, which for newer fans is evident by the fact he's still behind Jacob Abel. Back at the front, Lundgaard was on the charge, sidling past Foster into turn 1, and as the Brit came under increasing pressure from below behind, what we needed was a sacrifice, and that was about to come in the nick of time.
Stingray, 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 Stingray.
The yellows would bring half of the grid to pit road, meaning that Dixon now led the field to green on lap 13. Lundgaard was now ahead of McLaughlin as both attempted to make progress on the restart, though taking the Lando Norris line led to, as it happens, a Lando Norris result. Will Power's dementia appeared to kick in at this point as he looked at his teammate's line and thought, yeah, I think I might give that a go as well. That put him at the mercy of Carl Kirkwood, who finally got his payback for Detroit by barging the 12 machine off the road at Canada corner. That set up a lovely 3-wide moment that, thanks to Fox, we'll never see the end of. Meanwhile, it's not been a great day for Hunko's Hollinger as Connor Daly attempted the Stingray line at turn 5 to similar success. Thankfully, his car was just about in enough pieces to continue, though Daly opted to take a souvenir with him from the AMR safety team, and it's a real shame this wasn't on the Goodhart car. All the jokes about being on a leash would have been priceless. Anyway, after another round of pit stops that the extended highlights didn't think were interesting enough, Lundgaard led the way from Kirkwood and Rosenquist on lap 25. Yeah, we ain't even halfway through this one yet. Carl went on the offensive immediately, going into a whole different state to pass Lundgaard around the outside, that in turn opening the door back up to the McLaren, who got back into the lead. The Andretti's line, meanwhile, had been cause for some inspiration further back. Graham Rahal was running highly after some fantastic early strategy calls. Note the key part of that sentence was. The Penske of Power was lucky to avoid that chaos. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to avoid himself, this coinciding with a green flag pit stop. Yeah, I didn't know they existed either for leadership contender Kirkwood. Said hopes were dashed though when he saw the alleged cat f***er miles up the road and then the Meyershank of Rosenquist make his way back on warmed up tyres. There was still a long way to go in this one though, and it was still unclear which strategy would magically find itself at the front in the end. Joseph Newgarden could do with some luck this season, and in fairness to him was busy running second, which is apparently cause for celebration, which looks rather awkward when moments later you do this. You got made it back to the pits, but Indycar was back to throwing yellows out for the sake of it. So we get going again on lap 31. Dixon leading Rossi and Palou as Ferrucci made a dive bomb on Simpson into turn 1. These leaders were praying for a bit more of the pace car, however, trying to go long on fuel as the more traditional strategies run by Lundgaard and Kirkwood battled their way back through the never mind, he's f***ed it. This should have, rather ironically, helped out those on the alternate strategy, though no yellow came out, and Dixon now had to do 17 laps on a full tank if he wanted to pull off another Dixon-esque performance in Road America. That was a big ask though, even bigger when you have Alex Palou right on your tail. He was on a similar strategy though, so couldn't really afford to fight his teammate. That being said, the idea still scared Dixon into driving off into the distance, which maybe isn't the most sensible thing when your whole race hinges on, what was it again? Oh yeah, saving f***ing fuel. With 3 to go then, the PNC Bank Honda had to bail from the lead, handing P1 to Palou, though this still wasn't over. Right behind the Spaniard was the Meyer-Shank of Felix Rosenquist, the 60 looking much better on fuel and looking for his second ever victory. Now realistically, I could cue the dramatic music here, but we all know Palou is inevitable, somehow extending that gap to the Swede in the final laps and coming across the line to take his 6th win of the season, and with still enough fuel in the tank to complete the cool-down lap, which is better than can be said for the rest of the field. That ended this crazy race with this moment. I've said a lot about the Ferret over the years, though Ferrucci celebrating the podium by getting the fans to throw him alcohol over the fence is simply the most f***ing iconic thing I've ever seen, I'm not gonna lie. Indycar may have got off to a slow start in 2025, but this was the series at its best. You want to know how chaotic this one was? Well, remember this guy? He was having a beach holiday at the end of lap 1, and he came across the line to finish 7th. Utterly mental. Now, I may just have slagged off the rest of the season, but if you found this series now, why not go back and get caught up? I promise I make it far more exciting than the actual races were. And you know what, while you're at it, drop the video a like and get subscribed for more F1 and IndyCar content all the way throughout the remainder of 2025 and beyond. A final thank you goes out to all my members and patrons who get early access and exclusive content now. All links to that are down in the description below. I'll be back later in the week with another video. In the meantime, I'm going to go do a Santino Ferrucci. Actually, no, that just sounds f***ed up. You know what, just have a good one.